Oh, mine isn't. Why?
Hey, Dr. Taylor, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good.
I adjust my camera here so I look semi. Tom, you looking good. George, how are you?
Jay, it's Tom. I'm fine. I just unmuted.
Oh,
Hi, Katie. Tom Rust.
Hello.
Dawn should be on at some point. So you there in Manio, Katie? Is that where you work out of?
Yep. I work from home 2 days a week, and then we're in the office 3 days a week right now.
Okay.
We don't see many students. Students can come on campus, but they can use our library and stuff, but we do all of our student appointments virtually. So I spend most of my day on Zoom.
Imagine that.
Exactly.
Everybody loves Zoom.
My new normal.
My camera doesn't like Zoom though.
And then I have a little PowerPoint, so I don't know if I'll be able to share my screen. Will I be able to do that, or do I need to get the host responsibility?
So what I'll do is
You can do it.
Go ahead, Stan.
Just make her a co-host under participants.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how good I am at that, but what we've done in the past, or what I've done, is just allow others to share screen. So
Yeah,
you'll just go on once you do that and share screen,
that'll work.
and
We're all good people.
it'll pull your screen up for everybody's.
You got to watch Mr. Rust over there, though. He'll take control.
That's right.
I'm just an innocent bystander.
Are you still down in the wonderful South?
I am, but we're leaving Saturday, so I'll be back Sunday or Monday.
Oh well, we'll make sure that we have inclement weather for you so you won't miss that experience.
No, let's go ahead and miss it. I think we're good. If it doesn't rain for another month, it still won't be dried out, I don't think.
Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Richard.
So apparently my camera is backwards. I don't know how to change it. So you are looking at nothing much.
That's okay. We got your name up there, Dick. It's okay.
Very good.
We're looking
You can hear
at
us,
looks
right?
like
Yes.
Good. We want to make sure you can hear our special guest.
That's right. So George has made it, maybe. Yep. Are you there, George? Can you hear me?
She's muted right now.
She might just have it connected. Oh, good. Well, you will appreciate this, George. So I went skeet shooting this last weekend, and I got to shoot a Browning Satori, and it was nice.
How many did you hit?
So we had a few it was actually a friend of mine's. I was up there just hanging out, shooting a few other things. And he and one of the members of our hunt club, who her name's Wendy, they were out just skeet shooting. So, we went over and I threw some of the skeets for them because we just had one of the little chuck it kind of jobs. And so I tried on a few different guns, but I hit every one with that Satori.
The tool.
I'm telling you, for those of you who don't shoot, Browning Satoris are a very popular gun in the skeet shooting world. It's a double barrel shotgun, and they are not cheap. They're
Side by side or over under?
Over and
over
under.
under,
Oh, yeah.
and they're typically low end of them is going to be about $1,800, $2,000 up to about $5,000 or $6,000. So, needless to say, I don't have one, but
Probably why I don't shoot.
it's not always a cheap habit, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
fun.
now it's a struggle to find the shotgun shells.
Yeah. Oh, what shotgun shells? I haven't seen any for sale in a month or so.
Wally World had a box the other day and it was $12 a box.
Oh, wow. Lead
So,
shot?
Hey, Don.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. There you go. Hey, Don, how you doing?
Your camera, you might have to make sure the camera's right. If you look at the mute button, because you're unmuted, Don, but we still can't hear you. There's a little up arrow. Just click on that and make sure.
Right beside the microphone thing.
See if
Symbol.
it.
Yep.
Now,
There you are.
Katie, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Jay, I seem to have lost my camera, but I'm still here. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, we can see it. It's over your head, though.
Oh,
It's just pointed up. There you go.
okay.
All right.
Hey, Don, are you in country? Where are you at these days?
I'm at the beach.
Okay.
No.
I've been sticking around. I'll start traveling again in April.
Okay. We found out the other week that, a couple of our people were a little south of us and right next to each other and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, down in Key West. They're still
Oh.
there though, so I don't want to talk about them.
But they're both happen to be on this Zoom meeting, just
That's right.
as a maybe hint of.
And then we got Cora and Jimmy. They're in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So we have our own international meeting right here.
Right.
There you go.
There we are. Hi.
Hey, we're
We,
How you guys doing out there?
on,
We're doing fine, trying to decide
what's up, guys? We'll see you.
when to come back, when it's safe to come back. And
Yeah. Well,
It's getting better, it's getting
the
better.
cases have been dropping rapidly here
yeah,
of COVID.
that's what I've been reading. So
Yeah.
getting close, probably
Getting better.
near the end of March, we'll head back. So
Well, we've got
Thank
about
you.
a third of the county either has a vaccine or two, and or has gotten coronavirus. So,
So
And
they
that's-
have immunity now.
and that's just the people that have been tested positive. So,
yeah, it's just a lot of people that
herd immunity.
never got tested that went through it. I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Fauci says we're going to be wearing masks through 2022.
Yeah, he can do that if he wants.
Yeah,
Now he's saying people should be wearing double masks,
that's
even if they've
right.
had the vaccine.
That's today.
That's the day. You never know.
Well, we are in a very sporty place, and our son-in-law just won the top sharpshooter distance shooting. He received a $5,000 scope. He is like on cloud nine.
Yeah.
He thinks
Well, people don't realize, but when you get into the competitive world of shooting, the scopes many times are more than the gun.
yes,
Those
that's
optics
right.
they're not cheap,
Very expensive.
especially.
Jim is going hunting with Fraser today, and they hope to get a pig and a deer. So we'll see.
Nice.
Ah,
Good
That's
pork chops.
Yeah.
we are recovering. We had a big Mardi Gras party last night, a little late, but we taught people about Cajun food, about playing the washboard. It was, well, people have been very kind to us and from many different walks of life. And so just a little thank you, because this time we really wanted to get involved in the community, not just be a visitor, as well as get our home set up, which we've done. And so
Good.
Good deal.
Happy for you guys.
thank you.
Well,
We'll be happy to have you back.
let's get this party started. I'm gonna ring the bell.
Love it.
Rosemary, I'm gonna pick on you today. I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody. Rosemary, just unmute yourself. And Stan, do you have our flag? Excellent. Rosemary, if you would go ahead, give us the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Stan, once again, would you do our invocation, please?
Yes, if you would just pause for a thought about what we do as we affect our world, that as we go about our Rotary business, that we follow our motto, service above self, and put ourselves out there, maybe not in physical danger, but maybe in emotional danger, to help others who are less fortunate. Even knowing that someday we might need to be the recipient of that same assistance. Keep in mind the many ways that Rotarians around the world give and receive service for others. Thank you.
Oh, man. All right, thank you. I don't have any exciting announcements, save but one. If you are ready to try out your secretarial skills, we are in need as a club. I've sent emails out. I'll send, but it is an important job. Really, one of the functions that secretary does is to help us keep line and keep tabs on membership and attendance. So if you want more questions, send me an email or give me a call at some point afterwards. But that's all about the announcements that I have. Now, Carl has been working diligently on our beach food pantry fundraiser that we're having soon. And Carl, do you have anything to add that you want to add for that?
Just one quick thing. Everything's a go for March 19. Please, or two things. Please RSVP me your t-shirt size if you're going to be volunteering. And one size too large, just in case you're having to put a long sleeve shirt underneath it. It is March, so but please respond. Send out a number of emails, and one more will go out tomorrow. Second thing is we've set up an event on the First Flight Rotary website for the event. We've got a logo that Lori Howe Clark's friend has put together for us, and we've got that out and about. So please share that, and along with other promotions we'll be doing for the event. And just one last thing, we've had a lot of people say, "What is it?" Because they've kind of in and out. Giving away a free grilled hot dog lunch, freshly grilled hot dog lunch to everybody who comes through. You don't have to give a donation, but we'll do our best to get everyone guilted into giving a donation for the beach food pantry. And so it should be a fun event for a couple of hours, and hope everyone will participate. And if you can't, hope you'll have your office call in for a bunch of hot dogs and send in a bunch of cash, and we'll get some fireman's boots from Mike Talley to fill the boot.
All right. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any announcements or things they'd like to share with the club before we start with our speaker today? Hearing none, go ahead, Don. I'll let you have you unmute and introduce Katie, and then we will try to get this split screen working.
Can you hear me okay? Katie and I have been working together out of sight of each other because I'm sponsoring a gentleman to come to COA in the fall semester from the Dominican Republic. And unfortunately, he was trying to get here in this semester, but the embassy was not open. So he was not able to get his visa in time for the semester. But as I understand it, Katie, he's doing everything possible to make it for the fall. Which brought me to think, what about Rotary _ International and the effect we might have in helping Katie? And I don't know the answers to that, so I invited Katie to come talk to us and explain the international student part of what COA is doing, and if there's any way that we might be able to support her. That's it. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks. Well, thank you for, let me see if I can share mine. It says host disabled sharing. So
I'll try it again. I just set it off.
there you go. Let me give you, there you go. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, so my name is Katie Cross. Thank you guys so much for having me, for allowing me just to spend a little bit of time telling you about what we're doing at COA. I am the coordinator of International Student Support Services for the College of the Albemarle, and I also serve as the primary designated school official. It's a PDSO, that's what we call it, and that is a Department of Homeland Security designation. So I work with COA, our international students, and the Student Exchange Visitor Program, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. And I serve as that conduit or the go-between the government and the international students to make sure that everything that they're doing is up to par and that they're getting the information that they need to get and follow the requirements that they have to be an international student at COA in the United States. Let me go over here. Okay. So one of the things I thought I would do just really quickly is share a little bit about the COA international student population, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of who we are. At the start of the spring semester, we had reporting responsibilities to the federal government on 92 international students. 66 of them are active F1 visa holders, which means they're here enrolled in school. And 26 are in initial status, meaning that they're either waiting to try to get a visa or they're waiting to hear back from the government. But yet we still have reporting responsibilities on all 92. We have students from over 27 different countries attending COA. In our top 3 countries of enrollment, they're very varied. Ukraine, they're the most students from Ukraine, followed by Jamaica, followed by Turkey. So a very, very wide variety. And we have students after that. We have students from the Philippines, we have students from Romania, we have students from South Africa. So we have a pretty wide variety of students and from where they come from. And then a number of our students have either started degrees in their home country or even finished their degrees in their home country. And that's prior to enrolling in COA. So a lot of our students come with some higher education background, but a lot of them come also just to be one part of the United States educational system. The educational system in the United States is very highly valued worldwide. So to even have an associate's degree and to return to your home country, especially in Europe and in Eastern Europe, will really put you a leg ahead because it means you have improved your English language skills, your writing skills, your communication skills. About 2/3 of our population go through what we call the change of status process to get their F1 status, which I'll tell you a bit about here in a minute. And then about a third of them get a visa from their home country. And so I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. But the most popular major we have is business administration or global business management. But then we do have students in a large number of our programs, ranging from nursing to computer aided drafting to our transfer programs that prepare students to transfer to universities. I do like to let everybody know our numbers actually have dropped about between 25 and 40% in the last 4 years. And that decline is on average with a national decline across the country in international student enrollment. So a couple of years ago, we had about 150 international students we were working with. And so now hopefully we'll be able to increase that number and kind of get back to where we were a couple of years ago. One of the things we do like to make sure that everyone knows is there's a difference. So a lot of times you'll see international students come to our community in the summer. And most of these students are going to be part of that J1 work and travel program, which I know Jamie's part of your club, Jamie Banchek. She's very heavily involved in the J1 work and travel program. But those students come to the United States as part of that cultural program to come and work and travel. They have a limit to the amount of time that they can stay. They are sponsored. It's a Department of State designee sponsorship. And Jamie has tons more and knows so much more about that side than I do. I work with F1 students, which means their primary purpose in being in the United States is to pursue academic schooling. They are permitted to stay in the United States as long as they are in school and making progress. So it's not uncommon to see a student start at an associate level, go to the bachelor's, perhaps a master's, and then either a PhD or change their status to another visa status that allows them to stay in the United States a bit longer. F1 international students, though, are not permitted to work without work authorization. So that's a real big difference between J1 and F1. With that said, we get the majority of our student population from the J1 population. So typically what happens is students either come here, realize there is an opportunity for them to study in the United States and stay, or they come here, realize this opportunity, return home, and then attempt to stay. And so really that's how that's how non-immigrants can become an F1 student. They can do what we call a change of status option, which is where they come as an F1 or J1 work and travel. Perhaps they come as a B2, which is a tourist visa. They realize that they have an opportunity to stay here. And so instead of going home, they ask the federal government to change their status to an F1. So students do that by applying from within the United States to United States Customs and Immigration Services. We, on our part, we create a form that's required for them. We have documentation. There's a series of steps that students go through to get that. And then they have to maintain a status at all times. So the government does require them to maintain some status. And then once approved, which that really varies, it was traditionally 8 to 12 months, but we have seen ranges from as quick as 4 months to as long as 18 months. It really kind of, and of course, COVID has impacted that. And if they're approved, those students then have an F1 status, where students who want to get an F1 visa, they actually, most of our students come as J1s, maybe return home, complete their degree, or go back home and talk it over with their families. And then they apply from outside of the United States, typically in their home country. We create that I-20 form for them, send it to them, and then they go and get interviews to see if they can get the F1 visa. Now, COVID has impacted those interview process, much like Don had mentioned. A lot of embassies were closed for COVID. And then when they did reopen, they had such a huge backlog that it's just been really hard for them to catch up. And we're still seeing some of that backlog now. And then approvals for the F1 visa is determined by the Department of State. And then when students get that, they actually have an F1 visa, which is an entry document. So that's one of the main differences between students who do a change of status versus an F1. Students who do a change of status do not have an entry document, meaning if they decide to depart the United States to go home and visit their family for a holiday or if heaven forbid they have a family emergency, they actually, once at home, would have to request an F1 visa to re-enter the United States. And that visa, the ability to get that is really up to the Department of State. There's some benefits and challenges with both of these. The benefits, I think, for the change of status is that students get to stay in the United States. They get to continue their language and kind of their cultural adaptation to the United States during that opportunity. If all of the steps are followed, and there are a lot of steps, there's a greater chance of approval. Typically what has students not to be approved, if students get denied, is because they didn't follow the steps, and the steps are pretty cumbersome. But they have a greater chance of approval if they can follow and they can navigate that. And then in the world of COVID, they don't have to worry about trying to re-enter their country from the United States, or try to re-enter the United States from their country with COVID. But there are challenges with that change of status process. One being that it's a multi-step process. You have to maintain a status at all times. And so oftentimes students have to go from a J1 to a B2 to an F1, and that's a lot of paperwork. We recommend students work with a lawyer, an immigration lawyer. The paperwork and the process changed greatly in 2017. And so we now really recommend students use a lawyer, simply because it's become so much more cumbersome. The maintenance of that status, to maintain those status, can be costly for students. So we also want to make sure students are aware of that. And I think the other challenge is they don't get a visa, meaning if they do want to go home or something, they have to then apply for the visa, which costs a little bit more money. And so because of the benefits and challenges, and I'll talk about the F1 in a minute, we really recommend students pick the option that best fits their situation. And it's their decision because it's their immigration status. The benefits of going home is that if you do get denied, you're already at home and you don't impact any future, there's no negative impact on your future immigration statuses to the United States. Another benefit is, like I said, it's a multi-entry document. So these students can travel. They can go on home on our summers, or they can go home at holiday breaks, and they can re-enter without a problem. And in some ways, the process is much simpler. It's not as multi-step process. You kind of take care of yourself and you go. The challenges are that there's been a 40% decrease in F1 visas offered by the Department of State over the last 4 years. And the decision to get a visa is only based on a 2 to 3 minute interview by the Department of State. So they meet with the student, they ask them a few questions, it's 2 to 3 minutes long, and from that, they make the decision. So it's not a very lengthy process, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing, especially for students who are unable to communicate really why they want to come to the United States. And then finally, just another challenge is COVID, the world of COVID and getting those appointments and things like that. So those are some additional challenges that students are facing right now. I did want to take a few minutes to talk about sponsorship. I think it's funny because when I try to explain this to international students, it's usually pretty difficult. We do offer a session to international students who are in the United States about their options. And so sponsorship is always interesting because it's confusing because we use the term in two different ways. Sponsorship is a way for individuals to get involved, and also a way for a nonprofit organization to get involved. So individuals can serve as a non-immigrant sponsor. So an individual, an international student or someone who wants to become an international student must provide proof that they're able to pay to attend COA or any college or university in the United States. They have to provide proof that they or a sponsor have the funds. This is not a legally binding agreement between the student and the sponsor, but we do encourage typically sponsors and students to have some sort of conversation about what the term sponsorship in the immigration fashion means in that immigration world. Because for some individuals, sponsoring a student means you're just giving that student an opportunity to pursue a degree or an education in the United States. You're giving them the opportunity to attend. To others, it means that they're going to provide housing for the student or assist with housing. To others, it's about just providing emotional support to that student. And while to others, maybe it means that you're actually paying for the student. So we always encourage our sponsors to have that conversation with those students so that they kind of understand what level of sponsorship you're willing to have, because there's really no legal requirement for an immigration sponsor to actually pay for a student's school, but you are having that conversation because you do have to provide financial documentation. An individual who wants to sponsor an individual international student has to provide a letter of sponsorship and then has to provide financial documentation showing that you have at least $23,000 in a bank account for each of the last 3 consecutive months. And you may say like, well, why $23,000? How did you guys come up with that number? That's the official cost of attendance out of state for an international student to attend, live, and go to school in this area. It's the number that we report for the cost of attendance for financial aid reasons for American students. So we have to use that same number for international students as well. The number of students you can sponsor is only limited by your financial abilities. So typically we do have to track who's sponsoring who. And if you have $25,000 in your bank account, you can sponsor 1 student. We do have sponsors who provide documentation that have upwards to, $700,000, $800,000, and they could sponsor as many students that is permitted by that amount of money. U.S. businesses cannot serve as sponsors. There's actually no written regulation saying they can't, but typically the Department of State in the United States Custom and Immigration Services will not approve a business because there's believed to be a quid pro quo that the student would then work for you, which is prohibited. Nonprofit organizations such as yours, you can sponsor students as well. And this is where it gets a little confusing because one is an immigration. The first one I mentioned is for immigration purposes. It's just to get that student here. Now this is for tuition purposes. And this is a North Carolina general statute that provides that F1 students who are here legally can get in-state tuition to North Carolina community colleges. This is written by former Senator Bass Knight. But they say to get that, those students have to be sponsored by a nonprofit. And that nonprofit must be tax exempt and must be incorporated in the state of North Carolina. So those nonprofits are limited to 5 students a year. So you can do 5 students in the fall or the spring and the same 5 students in the fall or any portion thereof. And not the nonprofit organization takes financial responsibility for the payment of the students' tuition and fees. So really what that means is, and again, just like with the immigration sponsorship on the individual side, that looks different to different organizations. Some organizations sponsor out of the kindness of their heart. They pay for the students' tuition. Some sponsorship organizations, such as like Hotline, those students volunteer and spend some hours volunteering in a totally 100% nonprofit organization. And then and this is probably the most common, is that the student makes a donation to the nonprofit in the amount of the tuition, and then the nonprofit pays that. COA does not actually play any role in this agreement because it's between the student and the nonprofit. So what we play the role in is that we approve nonprofit organizations by making sure that you're 501c, tax exempt, and that you're incorporated in North Carolina. We have an application, pretty simple. It's like 3 or 4 lines. We make sure you get the students turn in the letters, and then our business office bills you for the students' tuition and fees. And then everything else is between the students and the sponsor. So we have a couple nonprofit, we have a lot more than a couple, but we have some nonprofit organizations that are very, very involved in this. Typically what happened was about 3 years ago, and this impacted, I believe, your Rotary Club, is that we got clarification from the state that you had to be incorporated in the state of North Carolina. And so we went through an audit process, and not all of our nonprofit organizations were incorporated. From what I understand, it's a paperwork process that you have to do. So we had to limit our nonprofit organizations to who could provide sponsorship to those who were incorporated and who were able to provide that proof of incorporation. in the state of North Carolina, which I check on a website to make sure that you've been incorporated. Recently, we also got further clarification about the 5 students. It's 5 students per calendar year, not per semester. So if you sponsor 3 students in the fall or in the spring, you can sponsor those 3 students in an additional 2 in the fall, but it's a max number or any portion of 5 students. And like I said, the students don't ever pay us. They work with their sponsor on that tuition. And then I know Don had asked to talk about some involvement opportunities. For us, we are restricted by the federal government. We don't do any outreach specifically recruiting J1 students. I'm a part of ISOP, which is International Student Outreach Program, which Jamie is also a part of. And so I do some just talking about culture shock and culture, just the experience of being a student in a new country there. But if you're looking for ways to get involved, the largest community we have of international students who come are part of that J1 program. So if it's providing housing, which they always need quality housing for J1 students, if it's volunteering for those ISOP organizations or getting involved in those community programs, those are opportunities that I know Jamie loves to have people involved in. For F1 students, if you are interested in serving as an individual sponsor for students seeking an F1 change of status or an F1 visa, and you have that financial means and you feel comfortable with that and you've had that conversation with the student, financial documentation is required for students going a change of status. It comes to me and it also goes to the federal government, and then which is United States Custom and Immigration Services. And for students getting an F1 visa, it comes to me. And then if the Department of State requests it during the student's interview, they would also show that as well. You also may, as a group, want to determine if First Flight Rotary wants to become an approved F1 nonprofit organization. That's a decision that you guys can make as a group if that's something you're interested in and want to pursue. And then finally, the easiest way you can do this is in engaging in conversation with our community members about the positive contributions that our international J1 and F1 students make. I know from a business perspective, a lot of our businesses really struggle without that J1 population. It's not a situation where these students take jobs. They actually just help these businesses because we typically have more job need than we have employees. And then the same thing with F1, our international students added a tremendous amount of cultural diversity to our campus, especially the DARE campus. And these students are in classes with our Native American students, which really help our students understand the global aspect of the world that we live in today and it really helps our students to really challenge and learn new cultures, to learn how other countries exist, and to really engage in that dialogue that really provides further growth for them in their educational journey. So yeah, that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions. A lot of information kind of shoved at you really quickly. Don, I think you're muted.
All right. Anybody have any questions for?
I do. If you can hear me, Stan and I've talked about this at length. We were interested in a Rotaract club. What clubs or organizations do you have on campus for these students? Or are they just on their own once they get here and they don't meet the other students? Or if they do, it's just by chance?
Well, international students are required by federal law to enroll in a certain number of face-to-face classes. Of course, in COVID, since we're not doing it, the federal government rescinded or kind of waived that restriction for right now. But in quote unquote normal times, we do have student clubs. Our student clubs are run and founded by students. And so that's not part of my responsibilities, but we do have a club organizer. And basically what happens is our students, we usually have a club fair and they can get involved. We do have clubs at COA, and how a club comes about is that there has to be a student who's enrolled in COA who's interested, and they get a COA faculty or staff advisor, and then they can formulate the club, get it up and running. Those clubs they do have access to some club fees, and they get some money for being an active club. I deal with just the immigration side of international students. I also assist with the international club, just simply in helping them get some organization stuff done. I'm one of like their behind the scenes co-advisors. But we do have other clubs. We have the Art Council Club. We've got clubs in Elizabeth City. What we typically struggle with at COA, but specifically the DARE campus, is we have a lot of students who come, take classes, maybe hang out, but then leave. There's not as much of that's one of the things we're working on, is creating that campus culture and that campus environment. And so if you have a student who's currently, it doesn't have to be an international student, but if you have a student who's currently in your club, who's a COA student, who's interested in creating a Rotaract club or anything like that, or any club, they could come in and we could plug them in with the club coordinator, the people who run those and who know how to do that at COA. Luckily, I don't have to do everything at this campus. I only have to do certain things. So I don't know tons about the club stuff. We have Emily Prizer, who works for us. She does that. We actually got someone specifically at DARE. Prior to this past year, we had to do everything through Elizabeth City. And so it really comes down to our biggest challenge with our students is getting students to want to start something, because we don't do clubs that are community clubs unless they have a student component to it, since all of our clubs are student clubs. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thanks. But you just raised another question for me: is how is the international population distributed between campuses?
Good question. So our students can take classes at any campus location they want to, and honestly, it kind of migrates based on the semester. The majority, I would say 85% of our international students are generally housed at the DARE campus, meaning they take most of their classes at DARE. But because our number one degree is business, some of our business classes are only taught in Elizabeth City. And so typically what happens in those semesters are a student will create, if they have to go to Elizabeth City on Monday and Wednesday, they would create their whole schedule in Elizabeth City on Monday and Wednesday for that semester, where they may then return to DARE the next following semester. But our nursing program is also only offered in Elizabeth City. Computer aided drafting is another really popular program, and that's only offered at Currituck. So we have international students sometimes at every location. We've had them at all 4 of our campus locations. Right now, since we're in COVID, they're pretty much all taking online classes. And so this year's data is a little skewed on where students are, since they're not really assigned to any campus location at this point.
It sounds like they need transportation as well when they get here.
Definitely. Well, and it's hard because we don't offer any, we have the DARE, they can ride the DARE community bus, that we do have that here, but really students do need, and a lot of times our student population, what will happen is our international students generally look out for each other. So in a typical year, when we have in-person meetings, we have some general meetings that all students have to attend in person, our international students, and they meet other international students. And I usually literally just say, okay, raise your hand if you live in Corolla, look around, get together. Who lives in Nags Head? Who lives in Buxton? Who lives in Hatteras? So they all try to get together. But those who have transportation generally then look out for those who don't. But I would say across the board, most of our students will use some sort of transportation. And those who don't, like I have a gentleman from Dominican Republic right now, he moved to Manio. And so he got a bike and he lives here. So he lives a little bit more local versus, trying to get here and getting the DARE transportation bus.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Katie, this is Stan. What was Emily's last name?
Prizer. And the best way to get a hold of her probably is to go through Dawn Allen, who's the coordinator of student life and leadership. And Dawn is the one who oversees the whole student life and leadership organization at COA. And then Emily works under her.
Is that this, if we wanted to have a speaker, let's say you mentioned Turkey as a country that a lot of the kids come from. If we wanted to say get 1 or 2 students once COVID's over to come speak, would we go through the same people?
No, you can just come through me because I'd be the one who will know most of them and who they are and who you'd actually want to come and speak and do a good job versus somebody who may tell you more stuff that you don't actually want to hear. But most of our students, we do have some pretty, like I've got some students who are just amazing. We have a young lady from Turkey right now. She's about to finish her degree in nursing. So in a couple months, she'll be a certified nurse. And that opens doors for her, not only here, but also in Turkey. So one of the things that's interesting too, I've learned a lot about this since being in this field, is that the US degrees, not only just academic degrees, but like medical degrees such as nursing, are recognized worldwide, where other countries are not recognized in the United States. So we currently have an international student. She's a permanent resident now because she's married to an American, but she came over and she was a doctor. She was an anesthesiologist in Ukraine, and she's in our nursing program right now. Simply because of the language. To be able to take our test to be a medical doctor was very intimidating. So she's working on her English language skills, and will take that, but will also be a nurse as well.
Hey, Jay, I think Dick was trying to raise his hand at one point. I'm not sure. But he's muted. You may have to unmute him from your end.
Unfortunately, I can't unmute. So.
All right. Quick thing about why First Flight dropped out of the program that Jim Perry used to coordinate. And Katie hit the nail on the head when the legislature changed the law that you had to be the group had to be both incorporated and a nonprofit. So First Flight and all the Rotary clubs kind of dropped out of sponsoring students. If the club wants to do it again, we can now, because of the fact that the foundation is a corporation and is a tax exempt entity. It wouldn't be the club, it would be the foundation. But anyway, that's just an FYI. I don't know if anybody wants to take the lead, but it is possible now.
And Mr. Perry does coordinate for a lot of these nonprofits.
But and that begs another question then, Katie. So how do the students get connected to COA? Does a person come here first like a J1 and then turn around and come to you and say, hey, I want to do it, and you connect them with a sponsor? Or
so we don't connect individual students with immigration sponsors or nonprofit sponsors. So a student who comes in and they come to us and they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. We have a presentation, which we go through all the steps and we talk about the options. And we talk about how a sponsor can be an American. It can be someone from home. So probably 50 to 60% of our students are sponsored from family at home or family friends, somebody like that at home or somebody here. And then, 40 to 50% are sponsored by Americans here. And so those are going to be people who they meet or connect with. So we don't connect them. That's the student's responsibility. And then for the nonprofit, what happens is nonprofits, typically when you apply, I'll ask you, do you want me to share your information or not? And so it's up to if a nonprofit says, yeah, I'm up for it, then we will share and say, hey, here's some nonprofits you may want to contact. Where others will say, no, we only want to sponsor students that are involved. Some churches say we only want to sponsor students who come to our church, who are involved with our church. Typically, Mr. Perry, Jim Perry, the ones he works with, he's open. So he says, send students my way. So he works with 4 or 5 different organizations. So the organizations that he works with sponsor 20 to 25 of our international students. And that might even be on the small number. So it really is up to that organization, because some organizations don't want students just coming by and asking. And then a lot of our organizations have actually become sponsors because international students have gone to them and said, hey, this is a great opportunity. I have this opportunity. Would you be willing to sponsor me? And then they've come to me and asked, what is involved in it. Corolla Chapel up in Corolla, they do that. Same thing with the Wild Horse Fund.
Dick, did you have a question? Yeah, maybe not. Anybody else? Any other questions for Katie?
Appreciate you taking the time, Katie.
No, thank you guys so much. I know it's a lot of information and it definitely can be confusing with all the different rules and the laws. And And, and especially with the college, we're kind of segmented, which is good because it doesn't make one person have to do everything. But there's definitely, if you're looking for the road track information, get with Dawn Allen. See if you can identify a student who's at COA to get started, because that's, like I said, that's one of the premises. I do know that they want a club organization to be run by students. And then if you have any other questions, you are more than welcome to give me a call, or you can email me, and I can always send you that application if your organization or your foundation decides to be a sponsor. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything for the club before we adjourn? Hearing none, let's go finish with the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And let's adjourn with our motto, service above self. Thanks a lot, guys. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Great seeing you, Don.
Yeah, absolutely.
No excuses, buddy. No excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, how you been, Don?